In security matters, the new definition for a lack of reasonable security. This month, California Attorney General Kamala Harris published an eye-opening report. It covers data breaches in the Golden State. Over the past 4 years, they affected more than 49 million Californians and increased at an exponential rate. In 2012, 2.6 million records were impacted. In 2015, 24 million. For more, I'm joined by Brian Vallance, Vice President of Policy and Outreach at the Center for Internet Security. Brian, the report also finds many of these breaches could have been prevented. Quote, in its annual data breach investigations report, Verizon has regularly pointed out that 99.9% of exploited vulnerabilities were compromised more than a year after the controls for the vulnerability have been publicly available. If organizations choose to amass data and then fail to uphold their responsibilities as data stewards, they are also culpable. Now, those are pretty strong words. To avoid culpability, the report recommends organizations meet the 20 controls outlined in the Center for Internet Security's critical security controls. Now, those are your organization's guidelines. Give us a summary.
Great. Thanks so much. Yeah, what the Attorney General basically did is do two things: recommend the 20 critical controls from CIS, and also said that the lack of following those would constitute sort of not constitute regional security. So basically, that's significant for a couple of reasons. It does sound a little onerous when you think about it, but it's really they're providing a guideline, a blueprint for small businesses to follow. Obviously, cybersecurity is a pretty complicated area, and there are a lot of small businesses that don't really know where to begin. The critical security controls provide that blueprint by defining sort of the top 20 things you can do as a network operator in order, in priority order.
Now, what happens if companies do not follow the CIS critical security controls? Can they be sued?
Well, that's a question for the California Attorney General, and I know that she's basically interpreting California law. There is a statute that does require reasonable security for organizations that collect private information. And so I think she's setting a bar that says that we keep seeing these data breach reports, and they are voluminous, and we're dependent on the internet like never before, but we're also vulnerable, and what do we do about it? So she outlined all of the bad things that are happening, but at the end basically recommended a very specific course of action. I think that our controls provides that very specific priority order things that these organizations can do to mitigate their vulnerabilities.
I've got more on that, Brian. The California Attorney General's report also recommends multi-factor authentication, encryption of data in transit, increased use of fraud alerts, and the harmonizing of state breach laws. Where do you see the biggest challenge here?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, the debate over cybersecurity has been pretty intense in the last couple of years, and the Congress and the President have just enacted a cyber sharing law, information sharing law. That was a great first step, and I think that that's going to be very important to letting everybody see what kind of attacks are coming into their networks. That's step one. Step two is really, now what do we do? And the controls, and as the AG pointed out, the controls are a very specific list of things where people can actually follow and clean up their network security. In fact, the Australian Intel department recently did a survey, and they found that just by doing the top 5 or 6 or 7 controls, they can eliminate 80% of all of the bad things that are happening to their networks. So the question is, we've got an issue out there, and how best to deal with it? And the controls provide a very easy starting place that doesn't get into the complicated issues of the debates that we're having in Congress, like the issues of needing more security, but observing constitutional privacy. So those are complicated issues, and we'll let those issues play out. But in the meantime, there are some serious, specific things that organizations can do to protect their networks.
You know, we've covered a lot of ground. Let's tie a bow on this issue. Alan Pollard, Director of Research at the SANS Institute, sent us an email this week. He says, quote, California led the way with breach notification legislation, and now it seems to be doing it again by drawing a line in the sand for minimum action companies must take to protect themselves against attacks. With Verizon and Zurich and others following a similar path, this could be the start of something big. So is this the start of something big, and how could it play out?
Absolutely no question about that. I think, again, for the last 10 years, we've been seeing the dependence on the internet grow and the vulnerabilities increase, and people are struggling to find out what they can do at their own individual organizations or at home. And these controls are free. You can any organization can download them from our internet or from our website, and they provide a place to start. This is something big, and I think this provides a blueprint for people who aren't experts to get up to speed on this.
It's all good information. Brian de Vallance with the Center for Internet Security. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks for inviting us.